Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. This is the ongoing air pump build, and I think I'm up to part 7 now. And the interesting thing I'm finding as I progress on, mostly on just a specific part like this one here, which is going to be the bracket that's going to hold the flywheel, it's taken a great number of steps and a fair amount of effort to get to the point where I can drill this concentric hole through here. And if I mess it up, that means I have to retrace a bunch of steps that I really just don't want to do. In theory, I have a bit of a buffer with this one. If I mess it up, what I could do is just widen the holes, and then I can make some bushings, like out of Teflon or Delron. And it's fine, but I don't want to get to the point where I'm doing that sort of thing, because it'll start looking a little bit more contrived. I want to hopefully get it done right the first time. So what I've done here to that end is I have clamped this really firmly to the bed of the mill. And on the underarm part there, the lower arm, you can see a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. And in between the two arms, I have taken two pieces of 3/4 inch plywood and glued them together. And then I gradually shaved them down like a tiny amount at a time on the table saw, until I had a nice tight wedged fit between the two arms. So that way, when I'm putting downward force here, in the first clip, all I was doing was running the original 1/4 inch drill bit through. In theory, it should go through the first hole, obviously, and then drill through the plywood, which is one of the main reasons for doing it. And then also the other reason for doing it is to make sure as it gets through there and gets down to where the hole is for the other arm, that it actually goes through without doing any drilling. I mean, just fitting where it should. And unfortunately, that all worked out really well. And then what I'm doing now is just gradually increasing the drill bit diameter until I get up to the size of hole I want. And it's, like I said, the initial setup for it was painstaking because it took a while to get it there. But in the end, it turned out well enough. Like, once I had the 1/4 inch go through all the way, I knew it was okay, and I didn't have any movement. The only movement I got at all was that wedged piece of plywood I put in there, because it is a fair amount of friction when this drill bit gets down. You can see how warm it got there when it goes through that plywood, especially with the oil on it, that it does move a little bit. But all that really mattered for that was that it supplied support for the upper arm, and of course allowed the drill bit to go through, which is not a big issue at all. So I'm not going to show you all of this because it does go on for a while, but I'm going to show you the rest of this drill bit going down through. And so what's going to happen is, once I have that all reamed out to the right size, it's going to be, it's going to become more clear now. I mean, I have had a couple people leave comments thinking, oh, I know what you're going to do. This is how this is going to work. Well, at this point, after today's video, it should be quite apparent, I think, how I'm going to want the air pump to work. And this is actually one of the main pieces. And fortunately, also after today, most of the work that needs to be done on this particular part is going to be done. So I won't have this little extra stress, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, when I'm working on it, because most of the work will be done, and anything that's left over shouldn't ruin the piece, let's say. So there you go. I was just testing to make sure that the hole went all the way down through. And now, of course, I haven't shown you the rest of the widening out. This is the final drill bit, and I'm just going to pull that out and unclamp it and show you what it looks like. It turned out really well. I had a bit of flaring on the back end where the drill bit was going through the bottom piece there. But that's not an issue at all. That'll be just something I will sand off or file off or deburr or whatever at some later point. For this video here today, I am not bothering doing any of that. I just wanted to show it to you done. So there you go. Those two holes line up so there won't be any vibration when the flywheel spins, and that's important. The least amount of moving and vibration, the better. So there you go. So that's a bit of a burr on the end there. Easy to get rid of, and something I'll do at a later date. So that's one step further, or closer, I should say, to getting this up and running. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the flywheel, and as you can see, I've machined down the brass rod that you see in between my fingers there. I machined it down to the right diameter for this. It was a little oversized to begin with, and then I cut off the little extra bit of brass that was on that. So it is now really close to its final dimensions. I still have a little bit of extra on it, but that's fine. I rather be able to take a little bit off than have to again put it back on. So the nice thing about this, the way I've done this so far, is the way it's put together. I can take it apart, I can put it back together, and it goes back together the way it should. In other words, it works no matter how many times I've taken this apart. At this point, I think I've taken it apart 4 times for the various stages that you'll see coming up. And each time I put it back together, it goes back together the way I want it to. And as you can see here, it spins reasonably nicely. I did stop that part where I am actually tightening it down full. It's not necessary, but this is the first time I had taken it apart and put it back together, and I wanted to make sure that it did actually do that. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to oil it up. Just put a little oil on there and on the other side, and I want to give it a bit of a spin, see how much friction there is. It's not something that's going to have to spin really fast, but I wanted to see if it has, does what it's supposed to. I mean, it is supposed to be a flywheel, and it has reasonably good, it spins long enough. It's doing what it's supposed to do, and as you can see, the wheel is concentric. It doesn't have any vibration to it, and that's really important. Now, this is the part that's going to attach to the arms, the apertures that are going to work the pistons. And you can see the hole I drilled for that. And this piece here I'm not entirely happy with, but again, it didn't take an awful lot of work to get this one to this point. So if I end up not liking it, I can easily remake that one. You'll see as it progresses here. The thing I don't like about it the most is you can see there is a bit of wobble. It is not obviously machined to fit perfectly on this particular shaft. It was on something else, and I transferred it to this. And as you can see, it has just a slight amount. But I'm not sure whether or not that wobble is important, because you see that hole that's rotating around? That's the hole that everything's going to be bolted to. So the outside concentricity isn't mattered. It doesn't matter at all. What does matter is whether or not that hole is concentric, and we'll see how that goes. And what I just showed you there is I need to make bushings for this. I started off with fairly loose bushings. I made 2 Delrin bushings, and I made them a little smaller than I think I needed to. I'm not sure, but again, it took me like 10 minutes to make them. They're a little tiny, so instead of machining them properly on the lathe, I'm just going to use a bit of sandpaper just to make sure there isn't any kind of burrs on them and any kind of roughage at all that may interfere and obviously creep in a bit of friction into this. And then what I'm going to do, this will be the second time I'll be taking this entirely apart, and from now on I'm just lightly, not tightening these down fully, because if you keep doing that, I mean, this is aluminum after all, and if I keep stressing out the threads, at some point in time they might just get loose, and I don't want that. So here we go. Just going to pop these on, and you'll see by what I mean by them being just a little bit loose in a second. But like I said, I started off loose, and after this thing gets a little bit further along in the progress for the build, I may decide to tighten that up a little bit, but I'm not sure how this is all going to function yet. But it keeps it relatively centered, and it doesn't, that's what I'm talking about right there. And I'm not sure really how much it matters whether or not it has a bit of wobble back and forth, because there's going to be an awful lot more stuff going on this, and I don't think they're going to matter really when it comes right down to it. So there's one more thing I want to do today, and that is I'm going to put a bit of a dimple on here, just so that when I lock down that with the Allen key, the set screw, that it holds it more firmly in place. Part of the reason for doing that is when this thing is operating as an air pump, that small brass part of the flywheel is going to have a fair amount of force on it. It's going to be operating 2 pistons, and I do want it to have a fair amount of anchor for that and an ability to, obviously resist it. I suppose at the time when it gets to where this is pretty much done, is I can like super glue that into place or Loctite it into place, and that would help as well. But this is something I can do right now, and it will allow me to take it off and do other work with it as well, and still also allow me to test things out. And the other reason for doing it was when I was thinking about this right now, it is a little out of concentric. It's not quite where I want it to be because, again, it was machined on something else. So what I could do, or at least I thought I could do at this point, was put it on the wheel here, put it on the lathe, tighten that down nice and firmly, and then I might be able to do some machining on it. But as I saw this spin, like when I turned on the lathe, I realized that it's out by too much. It's not going to obviously run at this RPM when it's on an air pump, but on the lathe, it's just too fast. There'd be too much force on that little set screw, and there's just no way it's going to be able to hold it. So what I did instead is I did a bit of sanding, and again, as I said in the beginning of this video, I may end up redoing this particular part of the flywheel. It is not as significant a redo as anything else. It is actually only like a couple of steps to get that to where I want it to be. But again, that's for a later date. I want it's easy to replicate, so I will save that if it becomes an issue. I think because that hole, the one that's perpendicular to this, is the one that matters, at some point I'll measure that all out and we'll see how it goes. So there you go. This is getting closer and closer. So that brass flywheel at the left is going to be attached to the pistons, and that is the next step. I have to get that all set and ready to go, and hopefully the next couple weeks I'll have some more for you. And as always, if you like this style of video, please like and or subscribe and leave me comments on what you think about it. And I will see you in the next video, and bye for now.